It is Sunday, and thus it is time for a Cursed Realm and Nightmare Corridor speedrun. In this video, I'll be showing you guys my teams. I'll show you guys the guides that I based my teams upon. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Let's see if we can get it done fairly fast this time around. So for the Nightmare Corridor, I made some improvements to my teams. So for the first team here, this is the Baden Solis team. Solis does work at Legendary, by the way. Obviously not at the same time, but you can make the team clear at Legendary Solis, but you still need a Baden build out. Here are the collections, and for these collections, there's nothing really of note. Next up, we have the Athalia team. Now for the Athalia team, there are a bunch of variants. I'll show you guys a guide later on, but for me, this is my personally most stable and best variant. There's also Orthos variants, and there are variants with the Souffle, and there are also variants with Mortis instead of this guy, and Awakened Sophia instead of this guy. But yeah, this is just the variant that ended up working the best for me. As for the collections, +1 dancers on Athalia. Other than that, nothing really of note. Obviously, Daemon needs to have this type of collection, but it does not need to be a +1. The next team here is the Vika team. Now for the Vika team, you have to do a little bit of fiddling around, and the main thing is just playing around with the health of the participants on the team. So as you can see here, once Liberta ults, come on Liberta. All right, there we go. He links the boss and Vika, and to achieve this, you need to make sure that Vika has the lowest health. Now for me, that I make sure to do that by throwing on an HP collection onto Lorsen, and also an HP collection onto Villanilla, or whatever she's called. My bad. It's probably not how you pronounce that. And then I remove 2 pieces of gear from Vika, making sure the link is complete. Next team, here's the Leica team. Now I've somewhat fixed my Leica team. Now this week I failed my 16th attempt at a +2 collection, still yet to get one. But I was able to get a +1 collection with the guaranteed thing you get from the yellow card. And that actually helped out this team a lot. So a +1 collection on Rain pretty much fixed this team, or it made this team about like 6 seconds faster. So yeah, that's the main thing that changed for this week. As for the rest of the collections, pretty much nothing of note. One thing is I have the +1 collection effect on this one, which gives a bit of extra damage, but honestly, you can even use the other type of this collection, and it's just about the same. The main thing about this team is just strong Leica, and then also a ideally +2 collection on Rain, and the team works out a lot better. And another thing I did is, as you can see here, I maxed out the Ranger tree for the Nightmare Corridor hit, and that also helped a significant amount. Next up, here's the, it's the Belinda team. You could also use Scarlet instead of Belinda. I'm using the Lucilla variant. There are other variants. If you use Lucilla in here, for example, you can use Lucilla over Rimuru, and then you would use, what's she called? You would use Rimuru in here, so basically you would swap the 2 heroes, right? But for me, this is way better for both teams, so this is what I ended up with. As for the collections, I guess like this one has a +1, but honestly, it doesn't really matter. Just any type of collection with good stats is fine for this team. And there's a bit of RNG aspect to this team as well, because yeah, that's just how it plays out for me anyways. Next up, and finally, we have this team. Obviously, this is not the best team, but it's the cheapest team you can make in my position, and in most people's position as well. As we can, and the only thing you need to know about this team is Baden investment doesn't matter, and these investments almost doesn't matter. I guess you need Trashia, or not Trashia, Nivanthi's E60, but rather than doing E60 Nivanthi, I would just replace her with, I mean, you can just toss in like Mortis or Hodgkin, or, I mean, even what is he called, Gabus, and other heroes like that. She isn't really needed. The only thing you need is you need to make sure you have Trashia's engraving level 30, this effect, and that's what makes Baden do any damage. So yeah, Trashia engraving 30, and away you go, basically. So that's it for my teams. Let's quickly head over to the browser real quick, and I'll show you guys the Nightmare Corridor guide I used. So, as per usual, Ferrara posts these weekly on the crowdsourcing Discord server, so I took a look at this guide. Now, this guide, it does focus a bit on the more whale formations, so that's really awesome if you have a larger account, right? Like if you could use Dragon Gwyneth in the second team, and also if you could use the Thane variant with the new dragon in the fourth team, I believe. But yeah, for most people, that's not achievable, so I didn't really look too much into this. And then another thing, shout out to, okay, let's get the name right this time. Shout out to, why can't I? Oh, my Discord is in streamer mode, so I can't read the name. Manuel Alcayaga. That's the best you're gonna get. Who is, well, I guess a co-writer of this guide. And this isn't even the correct guide. Let me just find the Nightmare Corridor. There it is. Who, yeah, basically this is the guide. It's been posted over on Reddit recently, I believe, as well. And as you can see here, it has a lot of variants. It's pretty good. I'll obviously link it in the description. And it's updated weekly by Manuel Alcayaga and his crew. But yeah, it basically just lists the different solutions to the different rounds in the Nightmare Corridor, and it also lists the different options for the different teams. So if you are more of like a whale account, you could take a look at some of these options down here, and thus in turn you could free up heroes to take a look at some of these better options, and especially some of these options for the last team, right? If you can move your Athalia team into this team, there's a lot of gains to be had for this round. But for most people, that's not achievable, and just try to replicate somewhat what I did for my teams. All right, let's do the Cursed Realm then real quick. So heading back over and heading back into the Cursed Realm. There it is. So for the Cursed Realm, as you can see, currently my rank is, I mean, it's pretty good, right? It's probably one of my better rankings recently. And what is the reason for that? Well, it's pretty much this hit, right? So normally my Lucius is not this good, but for whatever reason, one time, and I mean one time only, it hit 18 billion, and I have no idea why, but we thank the lords for that. So here are is the setup. Now for the setup, for Cursed Realm, collections actually matter a significant amount. So for the first team here, one thing you want to stack is full defense everywhere. So, well, this is a poor example, but yeah, Rosaline wants preference. Lucius obviously wants defense. This guy wants full defense and inside. Here I'm getting full defense, and here I'm getting inside on Odin. And inside on Odin is pretty significant because that's like the CC that makes the world go around. Alright, so for the next team, this is the Belinda team. Now for the Belinda team, there's a bit like, here the collections are more generous. A +2 on Jerome to keep him from dying is pretty much all you need, and then just good stats on the rest of the collections and you're good to go. There's a bit of RNG to this team, but honestly it's fairly stable. It's just like sometimes it can hit 27, 28 billion for me, but that rarely happens. So yeah, that's the RNG. It's just basically an upside RNG, but the floor is pretty high as well. Next up here, I popped the trial for the new hero, Lan. Pretty sick design if you ask me, but that is irrelevant. What is relevant, however, is this team, and most importantly, this team's collections. Now, ideally, you want +2 collections on both of these heroes, but I don't have a +2 collection, so I can't really do that with the Rowan collection. But what it comes down to then is just I'm using full attack wherever I can, right? Full attack, full attack, full attack. And then for Sophia, who's the damage dealer here, I'm stacking erosion. So I have this nice erosion piece. Obviously, you could also use the wings instead of the bolt. But yeah, I'm just using this one with a lot of erosion. And yeah, it's a fairly stable team, also using the new pet. Next up, speaking of fairly stable team, this team is not fairly stable. This is actually fairly unstable. This can swing anywhere from 9 to 14 billion for me. Obviously, a bit unfortunate that it didn't hit at the same time as the Lucius, but that's just how the RNG plays out. And I'm not willing to retry any further. For the collections on this team, ideally you have a lot of insight on the Naruko, and for this guy, basically just add a lot of like full buffing stats, like full attack, full defense, and stuff like that to help Antandro survive. For Brutus, it doesn't really matter; just get the +1 effect in here, and for Tamara's +2 effect to keep him alive. And if you have a +2 that also has some insight, that is also ideal, right? And yeah, again, it's a bit of an RNG round. Speaking of RNG round, so I was actually, when I got this insane hit, I was in the middle of trying out the SEAL team. This isn't actually the optimized SEAL team. I'll show you guys that one later on, but I guess this is one of the variants. And as per usual for SEAL teams in the Cursed Realm, you basically just want to stack inside everywhere. So we got inside here, we got inside here, we got inside here. This guy doesn't need inside, and then we got some well, I mean, I guess this guy doesn't need insight either. But yeah, basically just get insight on the CC heroes. Also, like if you had higher investment in some of these heroes, specifically in her, in Nyla's plus 60, that would be pretty meaningful. And also this guy, 9 furniture would probably help as well. But yeah, I don't have that. Or I could get that, but I'm not willing to spend the resources. Last but not least, here's actually the best team and the most stable team, so that's a nice coincidence. For me, this team just worked, which is nice. I didn't have to play around with anything. I'm just using basically full attack on everywhere, right? Just buffing everyone in the entire team, and then just a high attack Liberta collection, and that's pretty much it. Now, before we head over to the guys, I do want to show you guys. So I told you guys the SEAL team that my best hit included was actually a work in progress, and I believe this is actually the final product. Now, obviously, if you have Matria or Brutus built out, those are great options for the front line in the SEAL team. I don't have neither, but this guy shows his face all of a sudden, and as you can see here, 14 billion is really respectable for my SEAL teams. And yeah, I believe that's the version I ended up on. As you can see, it's even like kissing 15 billion. But yeah, obviously, unfortunately, I wasn't able to field it when I got this Lucius hit. All right, let's just quickly run through the Curse Realm guide, and I guess we can end it after that. So, again, for Aurora, shoutouts, post this weekly on the crowdsourcing Discord server. It's the Chinese guide, right? And as you can see here, I'm not using the Shuna version because I'm using Shuna in the last team, but I am using this version, right? Which with lots of insight on Odin and prep on Rosaline, and basically just good stats on these heroes. Here I'm not using Rimuru, right? I'm using Rimuru in the last team, so instead of Rimuru, I'm using Jerome in here, and I'm also using the Panda. Obviously, I'm not using the Dragon Gwyneth version. Here's the thing you can do this round, which I guess I forgot to mention, but it didn't work out for me. You can swap Team 3 and Team 4 in this round, and it's like pretty similar. For some people, it's better. For me, it's worse. But I would implore you guys to at least try out swapping Team 4 and 5, or 3 and 4, to see if it does any improvements. For me, it did not. So this is the Team 3, which is actually where I used the LAN team, but I'm not using this LAN variant, right? This LAN variant doesn't do as well for me. But I am using this Entendre variant, however, in this team instead. Here are the Seal variants, right? But obviously I can't test the Brutus variants because I don't have them. But this variant is actually weaker than the Ulna plus whatever the dragon I just showed you guys variant was, whatever that guy's called. That variant with Ulna and him in the front line is better than this variant. And it might even be better than some of these variants. And last but not least, right, this is the team, right, that most people are using. But obviously I'm using the 2 new dimensionals instead of Desira and instead of twins in this team. So let's just head over to, again, shoutouts, Emmanuel Alcayaga. God, that cannot be the way you pronounce it. And we'll just quickly show you guys their take on this. It's not the Mora round, it's, isn't it Chimera round? It is, right? Yeah, it is. Right, so here are what they lists for variations. So as you can see here are the Lucius variations. Here are the Belinda variations. Not a lot of them, but yeah. Again, I'm using this one. Here's the 3rd team variation. I guess it doesn't list the swap in here, interestingly enough, but yeah. Actually, it does, right? Because Entendre is down here. But yeah, for most people, just use this variation, and then use Entendre in the 5th team, or the 4th team, and then in the 5th team. So you can see here, if you have him and Matria, that's a good team. What I ended up doing is pretty much this team, except I used Nyla instead of this girl, and then I used whatever this dude is called instead of Nyla. And this team was pretty good. And then last but not least, right, I'm using this variant. You can also use this variant that frees up these 2 heroes, which is significant, potentially significant, right, for either the Belinda team if you use Rimuru in there, or the Lucius team if you use Shuna in there. So you have to play around with that. Right. I'll link these things in the description, and I believe